What happens to your body when you only eat one meal a day? This is also known as OMAD. Well, according to the claims I've seen across social media, one meal a day, or OMAD, is going to completely transform your body. Take a look at this video that hits one of the main reasons some people believe that eating a single meal is the secret nutrition hack that will change your life. Take a look.
Let's talk about why you would want to do OMAD, or one meal a day. The first is because it's ridiculously good for weight loss. It also is that first step in to fasting. So when you first start to go from 6 meals a day and you train yourself to 1 meal a day, you're gonna notice oh my gosh, this is all magic. It also is great for helping you unstick your weight. So if you've been doing intermittent fasting, 13 hours, and you really need that extra push, going to 1 meal a day can unstick you. I highly recommend it. It's also great for chronic conditions and really good for men. Men typically can rock 1 meal a day because it brings a man's testosterone levels up to close to 2,000%. So these are the conditions we would use 1 meal a day for.
Weight loss, breaking through plateaus, improving chronic conditions, and apparently boosting testosterone by 2,000%. I mean, sign me up, right? It will be all pretty remarkable if we could accomplish all those things if it were actually true. But just like every extreme diet trend that goes viral, there's a lot more to the story than the flashy claims it suggests. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the science behind the 1 meal a day fasting plan, or OMAD. I'm going to explain whether it's actually a secret weapon for fat loss, the potential downsides most people aren't talking about, and whether there are any benefits to gain from this way of eating. So let's make sure that you keep watching till the end as we dive into this topic in detail. Hey guys, my name is Andres Ayesta. I'm a registered dietitian who helps busy, high-performing men level up their nutrition, lose fat, and build the body that they want. I focus on simple, sustainable strategies for weight loss, and I'm all about giving you the latest science without the fads, without the gimmicks, and making it easy for you. So the topic today is OMAD. Is eating 1 meal a day, aka OMAD, just another fad? I've been seeing so much hype around this way of eating, along with plenty of 1 meal, what I eat in a day type videos. And all these creators have been making claims that this way of eating is a shortcut to weight loss. It's a shortcut to better health and even massive hormone boosts. With people saying that skyrockets testosterone or resets your metabolism, it's easy to get caught up on the excitement, right? I even got a client that reached out to me the other day and said that, hey, should I be doing this? But is it actually a game changer, or is it just another extreme trend? In today's video, I'm going to give you a full breakdown, including what happens to your body and metabolism during a 23-hour fast, whether OMAD will make weight loss easy, and the risk of this diet that everyone needs to be warned about. Plus, I'll also take you through every one of the claims in the video clip I showed you earlier to explain whether they're actually accurate or whether it's all nonsense designed to get views on social media, which is more likely the case scenario. So if that sounds good, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get right into it. Let's start with the definitions first. OMAD is a pretty simple concept to understand. Unlike a lot of other plants, there aren't a lot of rules about what you can and can't eat. Although I will add as a side note that OMAD is huge in the carnivore and low carb community. But essentially, OMAD is just eating all your food for the day at once, usually in a window of about an hour, and fasting for the other 23 hours of the day. So OMAD isn't really a diet, it's just a different kind of meal schedule like any other intermittent fasting strategy out there that you may have heard about. Now, intermittent fasting or fasting is something I've personally been interested in for years. Not only did I complete my master thesis on this topic in 2015, but I also practiced intermittent fasting for an entire year while doing this, so it's something that I know a thing or two even before it was being talked about mainstream. Fasting is a practice that's been around for centuries, whether for religious, cultural, or health reasons. But in recent years, it's gained a lot of popularity in the health and wellness world, especially for things like weight loss, blood sugar control, and even longevity. At its core, fasting is just an extended period of time without eating. When you're fasting, your body shifts from burning glucose from food to tapping into stored energy like glycogen and body fat. Now, fasting can look different for everyone. Some people just do shorter fasts like 12 to 14 hours overnight, while others go for more extended periods like 24 hours or even multiple days, and I have done both. But not all fasting styles are created equal, and the approach that works best depends on your lifestyle, your goals, and how your body responds. I'm not going to get into all the different fasting methods today in this video, but probably the most common method is 16-8, where you fast for 16 hours and have an eating window that is going to be for about 8 hours or so. There's also the 5-2 method, which involves eating normally for 5 days a week and significantly cutting calories down to 500 to 600 calories on non-consecutive days. We're essentially kind of doing OMAD a couple times a week. And OMAD is just another one of these these methods with a very restricted time frame every day, where most of the day is spent, well, not eating. So what happens to your body when you fast for 23 hours a day? Well, the body's designed to be able to survive in conditions when there's no access to food for a very long period of time, like sometimes like 20 days plus, depending on how much body fat you carry. And to help us do that, there are two different fuel sources we can use: glucose and fat. To understand what happens during a 23-hour fast, let's go through something called the fed-fast cycle, which is really what explains what happens in that process. This is a cycle that our bodies go through, and it has 4 stages: the fed state, the post-absorptive state, also known as the early fasting state, the fasting state itself, and the starvation or long-term fast state. The first one is the fed state. This is what's happening in the first 4 or so hours after eating. Right after you have food, your body's in full digestion mode. Blood sugar rises, insulin spikes, and your body starts to use food you just ate for immediate energy. Any extra glucose that isn't used right away gets stored in your liver and muscles as glycogen, and if there's an excess of calories, our body's going to store that as fat for later use. This is also when protein from your meal is broken down into amino acids, and it's used for muscle repair and other essential functions. The second stage is the post-absorptive or early fasting state. This next phase happens from the time your food is fully digested and can last anywhere between 12 hours to 48 hours, and it can really differ between individuals. A few hours after your last meal, your body starts shifting gears. Blood sugars and insulin levels begin to drop, and since you're no longer eating, your body taps into glycogen, which is a stored form of carbohydrates, for energy. Some fat burning starts happening in this phase, but glycogen is still the main fuel source. If you've ever done 16-8 intermittent fasting type of methods, this is the phase you're in most of the time during that fast. Then we get into the real fasting state. Once the glycogen levels really start to run low, your body has to find a new energy source. And in a 23-hour fast, you might get into this state, and for people who are following a low-carb keto diet while doing OMAD, well, either they'll get there faster or they will be there already because they don't have much stored glycogen in the first place. This is where fat burning ramps up and your liver starts to produce ketones, which are an alternative fuel source made from fat. Your body may break down muscle in this state to provide amino acids required to produce more glucose. This is known as gluconeogenesis. Then we enter the fourth and last stage, which is the starvation or long-term fast state. This happens approximately after 48 hours of fasting, and the body undergoes significant metabolic adaptations. Ketogenesis accelerates, leading to increased production of ketone bodies from fatty acids, and these ketones become the primary energy source for the brain, reducing its reliance on glucose and preserving muscle protein. This is a stage where all the health benefit claims that are out there for fasting actually come into play, like enhanced insulin sensitivity, which is related to extended fast period of times where you may have better blood sugar regulation and potentially reducing the risk of type 2 diabetes. And then also cellular autophagy, which is like a very big thing in the longevity wellness world, because fasting triggers autophagy, which is a cellular cleanup process that removes damaged components, potentially reducing the risk of neurodegenerative diseases and cancer. Now, there's a ton of research and studies looking at this, and they've shown that it's not fasting that creates this, just simply a state of caloric restriction or when there's not enough fuel available from food coming in. And the last one is cardiovascular health, which prolonged fasting has been associated with improved cardiovascular markers, including reduced blood pressure, cholesterol levels, triglycerides, which all contribute to overall heart health. So to summarize, what happens during those 23 hours of fasting really depends on what you eat and how much, but you also likely see a shift to fat burning, but at the very beginning stages. Assuming you're not eating more than what your calorie actually requires, which means you will not be in a calorie deficit anyways. Now let's go back to the video I showed in the beginning and go through some of the claims that this creator made. Here's the first part.
Let's talk about why you would want to do OMAD, or 1 meal a day. The first is because it's ridiculously good for weight loss.
Okay, so is OMAD ridiculously good for weight loss? Well, yes, but that's mostly because it's pretty hard to overeat when you're only eating a single meal a day. When you drastically lower your calories, you're going to lose weight, period. It's simply about energy balance, not because OMAD is some kind of weight loss magic bullet. For example, I want to show you one viral video of what I eat in a day that I came across of this woman doing OMAD, and I'm going to add up all the calories that she had in that one meal. So in this meal, we got quinoa, salmon, veggies, yogurt dressing. Amazing. Now, of course, I don't really know the exact quantities here, but I'm just doing an estimation based on what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a cup of cooked quinoa at around 220 calories, some yogurt dressing, maybe 100 calories on the high end, 5 ounces of salmon, 260 calories or so, and let's say about 50 calories for the veggies, and maybe 1 tablespoon of olive oil, which is 120 calories that was used to kind of cook up all that. There's a rough estimate on that, about 750 calories. Now, let's make an assumption that yogurt she had was about 1.5 cups, and let's just assume this is like whole milk yogurt. That is about 350 calories. So as you can see, this woman ate a total of 1,100 calories just for the day. Just for comparison, now the average calories needed for maintenance for the average woman can be anywhere between 1,700 to 2,500 calories, which means this is a huge calorie deficit in itself. So it's not OMAD specifically that's causing the weight loss, but probably the extremely low calorie intake that this woman is actually having. Intermittent fasting of any kind is a calorie restriction strategy. It can be helpful for some people because eating within a certain window naturally cuts down on the total calories that they consume. But when we look into the research on intermittent fasting for weight loss, this is exactly what we see. A 2022 research review found that incorporating a form of intermittent fasting, regardless of the type, can help people achieve 3 to 8% weight loss over 8 to 12 weeks. For context, if you weigh 200 pounds, that is 6 to 16 pounds weight loss, which is significant. But it was also found that the degree of weight loss is very similar to what you would achieve with traditional calorie restriction. So basically, you can lose weight with IF methods because you're consuming less calories, and if you ate that same number of calories without the time restriction, what would you see similar weight loss results? Now, there are a few studies that have been done specifically on OMAD that had some interesting findings. In one study, for example, switching to 1 meal a day while keeping calories consistent actually leads to some weight loss that didn't occur when the subjects were eating 3 meals a day. In another study, there was a similar result. An average of 1.4 kilograms of body mass was lost in 1 meal a day groups when only half of kilogram was lost in the 3 meals per day group. But before you get too excited, there's a few issues that it's important to share in here about the studies that I need to point out. First, both of them were super small. The first one had 15 participants and the other one had 13 participants respectively. Second, they were already lean people, so not people who were considered overweight. And third, of that 1.4 kilograms of body mass that was lost by the 1 meal a day group, only 0.7 kilograms of that was fat mass, meaning that on average, half of the weight loss came from muscle loss. The first of those studies, which took place over 8 weeks, had a dropout rate of 29%. So a significant number of participants did not make it all the way to the end, which talks about the aspect of sustainability. And in the second study, it was only 11 days long. So I'm not saying definitively that there is zero weight loss benefits to OMAD in comparison with eating 3 meals a day, and the authors even suggest that changes in metabolism as a result of the eating patterns could be the reason for increasing fat loss compared to the 3 meals a day, but they also make the point of saying that it's possible that participants simply ate more food during the 3 meals a day, and it was a condition that was not recorded by the participants, and that could have accounted for the difference in weight loss between groups. I mean, it's notoriously difficult in nutrition studies to make sure that the participants of the same study are accounting for every single piece of food that they're eating, so there's going to be a lot of room for error. So the biggest takeaway here is that we don't have enough research on this to make any definitive conclusions. These studies are too small and we don't have enough information on long-term sustainability, and to me, sustainability is the biggest issue with OMAD. Sure, you might be able to lose some weight if you only eat 1 meal a day, but is that actually practical for you? It could be. Or are you going to get to the point where you feel so hungry you end up overeating and sabotaging any weight loss progress you made? Or are you going to feel weak and irritable from not eating any food throughout the day? Again, I'm going to get more into the drawbacks in a minute, but these are just a few of the downsides that you have to consider before doing this. But let's go back and look at some of the other claims in the video from before.
It's ridiculously good for weight loss. It also is that first step in to fasting. So when you first start to go from 6 meals a day and you train yourself to 1 meal a day, you're gonna notice oh my gosh, this is all magic.
So as I've already mentioned, this isn't magic, and claiming that any diet plan is magic, it's not helping anyone. Also, I would never say that OMAD is the first step into fasting. That's a pretty ridiculous statement to make. If someone is interested in trying out fasting, don't get them started by fasting 23 freaking hours. Maybe start with something more manageable like a 14-10 or a 16-8 approach, right? Let's see this next part.
It also is great for helping you unstick your weight. So if you've been doing intermittent fasting 13 hours and you really need that extra push, going to 1 meal a day can unstick you. I highly recommend it.
The only way that OMAD is going to unstick your weight loss is by restricting your calories even further. But we also need to look at other reasons why your weight loss might be stuck. For example, if your weight isn't shifting because you're in a highly stressed state, then cutting down onto 1 meal a day is not necessarily going to solve the problem. It's probably going to even cause more harm. This other part is important. Pay attention to it.
It's also great for chronic conditions and really good for men. Men typically can rock one meal a day because it brings a man's testosterone levels up to close to 2,000%.
Like, it's crazy. I really wish I knew where this 2,000% increase in testosterone claim was coming from, because it's pretty funny, and I'm really hoping that she doesn't actually believe this. Some studies have found that intermittent fasting can actually decrease testosterone levels in lean, physically active men. However, if someone is overweight and doesn't have very good metabolic health, and they use intermittent fasting as a weight loss strategy, that might improve their testosterone as a side effect, which is a good thing. So it's possible that there's a benefit to testosterone long term, but again, 2,000% increase is a number totally pulled out of thin air. And finally, I want to touch on the chronic disease piece of this. I'm not trying to say that fasting has no benefits. And some people who find that intermittent fasting works well for their life and is sustainable for them, great. There's some evidence that intermittent fasting can improve and will improve cardiovascular or cardiometabolic health, diminish inflammation, improve weight management, a bunch of other things like insulin sensitivity, which we talked about earlier, all of which can reduce the risk of chronic disease. But there isn't simply enough evidence to make this a broad recommendation that everyone should be following. For example, in my coaching program, the Fit Man Blueprint, we help some of our clients incorporate intermittent fasting, what is the best option for their schedule, their lifestyle, and their goals that I'm going to give every client that comes through the door. Here's a good example. Now, this is not a client, this is actually me, who I kind of started implementing this for my own reasons or for my own goals, which is I incorporated intermittent fasting into my regimens when my goals was fat loss. And it's actually what allowed me to drop nearly 15 pounds in about 8 weeks and go from this to this. And I use it as a calorie management strategy. I learned to incorporate 2 big meals per day starting at around noon, and my second meal was around 8 with 1 snack pre-training in the afternoon. This allowed me to have more satisfying meals because I really want to feel full. These were anywhere between 500 to 700 calories, but it allowed me to still maintain a calorie deficit, which was required for me to have dropped that amount of weight within that time frame. Now, quick shameless plug in here, a program helps men, maybe like you, cut through a lot of BS on the internet and get insane results by following a plan that fits into their unique needs when it comes down to nutrition, fitness, supplementation, hormone health, and many other things. We even do labs for our guys just to make sure they understand exactly what's going on. So if you're a guy in your 30s, 40s, and 50s who is looking to lose the extra 20 to 30 pounds that you really can't seem to get rid of, I created a free training that explains why that is probably happening and what you can do about it. So if you're interested, make sure you check out the link in the description. Now let's move on to some of the downsides of OMAD before we wrap it up for the day. And we're going to talk about a lot of the downsides that these creators are really conveniently leaving out when they're treating this like a magic pill. I've touched a little bit on this already, but let's go through the main issues with this approach. Number one is nutrient deficiencies. Quite simply, it's hard to get enough protein, fiber, vitamins, and minerals in one meal. When you're squeezing an entire day's worth of nutrients into a single sitting, you're more likely to fall short on key micronutrients like magnesium, potassium, and B vitamins, not to mention fiber, which is essential for gut health. The second is potential for muscle loss. Only eating once a day makes it harder to get enough protein to maintain muscle mass, and the body may start to break down muscle for energy if you cut your calories too low. Preliminary research on OMAD has shown muscle loss as a side effect of this eating pattern, if you don't remember what I just mentioned a few minutes ago. Now, the third piece is like digestive issues. Eating one massive meal can be a shock to your digestive system, leading to bloating and discomfort. When you're cramming all your calories into a short window, your stomach has to work overtime to process everything at once, particularly when it's hypercaloric. Some people may experience heartburn, gas, or digestive sluggishness, which simply because their gut isn't really used to handling such a large volume of food in one go. And the last one is important, is disordered eating risk. OMAD can be a slippery slope into disordered eating behavior, especially for those with a history of restricted dieting or binge eating. Fasting all day and then eating a huge meal can feel similar to a binge restrict cycle where you swing between extreme hunger and overeating. For some people, this pattern can reinforce an unhealthy relationship with food, making it harder to eat intuitively and listen to their own natural hunger cues. What I said about every restrictive diet I've ever reviewed before. If this style of eating works for you and you're feeling amazing doing it this way, go for it. I'm glad that you found something that works for you. But for people who have been watching this and feeling like I could never just eat one meal a day, the good news is that you don't necessarily have to. You can get the exact same benefits and weight loss results by eating in a calorie deficit with any style of eating or meal timing that works for you and your life. Because here's the thing, let's imagine OMAD was without a doubt the most effective way to lose fat. Even if that were true, it would require you sticking to that diet long enough to be able to see results. And if you were constantly miserable and unable to follow the plan, then it would not get you the results that you want. I make the point a lot in my videos. The best diet for you isn't the one that necessarily gets you the results the fastest. It's the one that allows you to reach your goals and maintain those results long term. A lot of people tell me that they want to try these short-term highly restrictive methods to lose weight initially, and then they're just simply going to eat healthy. But if they don't necessarily build the solid habits or an understanding of what eating healthy actually looks like on a day-to-day basis, all that weight is going to pile right back on. In fact, I just saw this comment on TikTok the other day on one video that I posted, I think 3 years ago, but it's still getting a lot of engagement, of a man, former NFL player, that did a 40-day fast. fast, and he really was raving about his result and how he lost crazy amounts of weight. In the comments, I saw one specific one that said, I would rather do fasting and drop 2 pounds a day rather than doing 2 pounds a week and just regular conventional dieting. And it made me think, well, that's a fast way of doing this because it's a shorter period of time. But my question was, well, what happens after you're done? What happens after you get to the weight goal that you actually achieved? What if you gain the same amount of weight in the same amount of time or faster? Then what was the point of doing that in the first place? So long and steady, it's always going to lead to better results, particularly when you're doing fasting as a way to lose weight quickly. Please don't. But I think that's all we have for today. This is a good place where we can wrap things up. If you have any questions about OMAD or intermittent fasting, drop those in the comments. I respond to those and I'm happy to chat more. Also suggest any type of other topics that you want me to cover as well. Again, thank you so much for watching. If you're a returning subscriber, I appreciate the support. I've been really trying to give you as much content, as much value as we can as possible. And if you're new here, I would love it and I appreciate it if you shared this with somebody that could use it. Also, if you love it yourself and want to see more stuff like this from me, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can get in touch with me at any type of point and you can always see what I got coming up every single week. But this is all I have for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week for a new video.